The moment a relaxed country superstar walks onto a daytime television set, most people expect a certain level of charm, humor, and a few stories about music and life. Yet, at times, a conversation can change in a way that no one in the room anticipates. What you're about to hear is the story of a conversation that began like any other promotional appearance by a celebrity, but quickly escalated into one of the most intense moments in daytime television history. When Joy Behar chose to attack Blake Shelton's authenticity as a country artist, his personal life, and the trajectory his music career had taken, she might have thought she was asking tough questions. What she didn't realize was that she was about to unleash a different side of Blake Shelton that few people had ever seen. The studio for The View seemed different this particular morning. A buzz was apparent in the studio audience long before filming began for the day's episodes. Blake Shelton was this day's guest, and he certainly drew a diverse crowd for his appearance. Some in the studio audience were die-hard fans of country music who had been enjoying Blake Shelton's music for decades now. Others in the studio audience would be fans who recognized Blake Shelton from his television work, possibly from his longtime role on the singing competition show The Voice. At 48 years old, Blake Shelton had managed something that few in entertainment ever managed to attain. He had managed to create two powerful careers at the same time. On one hand, he was a prominent figure in the world of country music, where he had been making a name for himself for more than 2 decades. On the other hand, he was a household name for millions of television viewers who possibly never even listened to country music on the radio. Such crossover success is rarely achieved with some degree of criticism, and there were some in the traditional world of country music who might have questioned whether his rise to fame on television might slowly be changing him in ways he didn't even realize. It was obvious that Joy Behar intended to bring this very topic into the conversation. As Blake Shelton finally emerged onto the stage, he was met with loud and enthusiastic applause from the waiting audience. His smile seemed to materialize instantly, the same easygoing and friendly smile that he had grown accustomed to displaying to his fans throughout the years. Blake casually waved towards the waiting crowd, his laid-back Oklahoma attitude and presence seeming to fill the room even before he said a single word. Blake Shelton had always been a man who seemed to carry himself like he never forgot where he came from. He seemed friendly, approachable, and effortlessly confident. Blake seemed like the kind of celebrity who never let fame change him in any way. And yet, for those who had paid close attention to his career over the years, something else was true as well. Behind this relaxed demeanor was a man who had survived the unpredictable storms of the entertainment business. He had faced criticism, complex relationships, personal heartbreak, yet still managed to remain one of the most successful country music stars of his generation. The interview began exactly as anyone would expect. Whoopi Goldberg greeted him warmly, congratulating him on his success in music, television, and family life. The early stages of the conversation flowed easily. Blake Shelton spoke freely about his work on The Voice, his music, and his life with Gwen Stefani. He answered questions with his trademark humor, making jokes with the hosts and keeping the audience in stitches. All was right with the world for a few minutes or so. Then, Joy Behar leaned forward in her chair. She started off by praising Blake's popularity and how his success had grown beyond just country music, but her demeanor quickly shifted as she began to bring up a criticism that had been floating around from some of his fans and critics. She asked him how he handled being criticized by those who felt he had lost some of his country roots since he had become such a big star on television and married a pop icon around the globe. She said that Blake Shelton had become someone who resembled a Hollywood celebrity, not just a traditional country star. For a brief moment, Blake's smile stopped. Then he made his response. He told her that he still lived in Oklahoma and still enjoyed spending time on his ranch as often as he could. His passion for the country lifestyle had never diminished just because he had decided to be a part of the television industry as well. He told her that because of his time on The Voice, he had been able to help hundreds of young artists start their music careers. But Joy wanted to continue the subject. She proposed that some people thought that his lifestyle had dramatically changed since he became part of the entertainment industry in Hollywood. The red carpet appearances, the celebrity marriage, and the constant media attention had created a version of Blake Shelton that was very different from the small-town singer who first came to Nashville. This time, the expression on Blake's face was slightly more serious. Blake reminded the panel that he had worked in the country music industry for over 2 decades and had accumulated 28 #1 songs on country radio. A television show would not remove the long journey that he had taken to get there. However, the conversation was about to become even more personal. Joy began to talk about his previous marriage to fellow country music artist Miranda Lambert, as well as the timeline of the start of his relationship with Stefani. The audience squirmed uncomfortably as the conversation began to center on speculation, which was so commonly reported in tabloids. Blake was cautious in his response.
While he did admit that the divorce process was incredibly painful, both he and Miranda went through a hard time during the ending of their relationship. Still, he wanted to make it clear to the viewers at home that some parts of his life were off limits, and he certainly did not plan on sharing those experiences as entertainment for the viewing public. Joy had said that the fact that he was in a relationship with Gwen had generated enormous publicity, and there were people who believed that the relationship they were in was part of the media story because it was good for the career of both Blake and Gwen. Blake then stopped speaking. When he continued speaking, there was a change in the tone he was using. Blake said that the relationship he had with his wife was not done for publicity and ratings. During the toughest time in his life, he had found a person who knew exactly what he was going through. They had both been through the toughest breakups and had found each other because they understood each other. The room was extremely quiet. Blake then stood up from his chair. The move surprised the audience as well as the hosts. He began to tell of the place where his story began, of Ada, Oklahoma, a small town where life was uncomplicated, where he began to follow his dreams of music. He talked of hunting and fishing as a boy, of singing in bars as a teenager, of years of going back and forth to Nashville, seeking a chance. Those early years, he said, were not easy, but he never gave up because he believed in what he was doing, in music. And because of this, he was able to achieve his first #1 song at the age of 25. And then he went on to talk of all the other things he had done, of all the other #1 hits he had achieved, of all the accolades he received within the world of country music. He talked of the genre of music he performed, of the fact that country music was not based on looks, on image, but on honesty, on storytelling, on experiences people could identify with. And then he went on to something even more important. However, becoming a stepfather to Gwen Stefani's 3 children had changed his life completely. Spending time with them and teaching them the basics of the outdoors had given him a new sense of purpose that he could never have envisioned. "These were the most authentic moments of my life," Blake explained. When the singer finished speaking, the studio audience was silent. The interview had changed into something far beyond what it was originally intended to be. Blake explained that when he came into the studio, he was expecting to talk about his music and what projects he had in the works. However, the conversation had changed into a defense of his entire life. Blake explained to the people watching at home that they should never be made to feel as though they need to justify their happiness and personal growth to people who only know part of the story. But the smile returned to the face of the singer. With a touch of humor, he invited all interested in the real country music to come and watch him perform at the Grand Ole Opry in the coming weeks. In the next instant, Blake Shelton walked away from the set. The crowd was silent as they tried to comprehend all they had witnessed. What started as a simple television interview had become a reminder that there was so much more to every person than the image they present to the world. And for many people who were watching this interview on this day, it was the awakening they needed to understand the depth that was hiding behind Blake Shelton's country boy charm.